Hello, today I'm coming to you with the topic of understanding levels of grief and loss. As I come to today with you with this information, this is information that I have been gathering from over 40 years of public speaking, many years of being a registered nurse, and I'm a board certified behavioral health nurse or psychiatric nurse. Served as a former pastor, EAP counselor, hospital chaplain. So I've had many years of dealing with the issues of grief and loss. And so I've put together some thoughts about the different levels of grief and loss I want to share with you today. And that's the only thing I want to share with you in this video today is just the levels of grief and loss. So to do this, to illustrate this, I have a little notebook here that I have some circles to help illustrate the different degrees and levels of grief and loss. So bear with me as I share this with you. There are many different types of loss that you may have, and we grieve over each one of those losses. The losses could be minor in comparison to some severe, deep losses that you have. And I use these circles to show you a comparison of those. First of all, let's talk about the first circle. Your losses is in direct comparison to the attachment that you have to the item, person, event, relationship that you lose. So to illustrate this, the first circle that I want to share with you is, and I call it just the bad haircut. And you may have a bad haircut. We've all had them. I still do. It doesn't happen as often because I don't have as much hair to lose. But you could still have a bad haircut. A bad haircut will last 30, 60 days, sometimes longer, depending on how bad the haircut is. But it's time limited. Your hair will grow back, and for the most part, and for some of you, mine won't. But for the most part, your hair will grow back, and you'll be dealing with that loss of the haircut. So let me give you an example. So we're attached to this hair, to this haircut, and this style, and then we have the bad haircut, and then we find ourselves here with a little bit of a loss, and there's a void, and this is the grief that we have to go through with this amount of loss. And we deal with it, and life moves on. Then there may be other examples. For instance, you move to an area and you live there for a while. You gain friends. You enjoy certain restaurants. You enjoy the geographic location you're at, and like I said, the relationships you have, and then you move away. And there becomes a void and a loss right here for what you had before. There's a small piece of you that's missing. The void is maybe filled a little bit because of time and getting used to the new place and finding new restaurants and maybe visiting every now and then that old place. But at first there's that void. Then there may be a relationship you have. Maybe for some of you that's broke up with an individual, maybe it's an issue of divorce. Married 10 years and you shared your life together. And for whatever reason that is dissolved, they're still around, Maybe it's a easy divorce. Maybe it's a difficult divorce. But you find yourself in that void of loss, and you're grieving, and because you just feel like you are not quite the way you used to be. You walk around and in sometimes a fog or a daze and thinking, there's just part of me that's missing. I couldn't stand that person. We grown apart. There's been some things wrong with our relationship, but I still grieve. And we'll talk about how to grieve, how to go through that process of grieving later in another session. But today, all I want to talk about today is the levels. And then there's a relationship like my mother and my father had. They were married 65, 66 years, and a couple years ago, she went on to be with the Lord, and she died. And that was a long marriage. They were madly in love to the day Mom died. And when she left us, my dad was just a sliver. There's a complete void. There just wasn't much left of him emotionally, because this is what's gone and this is what's left. When it comes to levels of grief and loss, it also can be accumulative. You could have had a series of small losses that ends up making you feel a void. And you could also, again, accumulative, just when you were dealing with the loss of a relationship, then I had a loss of, and maybe it's piled on at the same time, loss of location, moving. Then somebody dies, then somebody else dies, then somebody else dies. And then you find yourself, well, I was here, but now I'm here. And as I said, it's accumulative, and it could be that a small loss triggers feelings and thoughts of greater losses. And it becomes, in that accumulative basis, where other folks will say, well, how are they grieving grief and loss hitting them so bad? Because after all, it was just a bad haircut, or they just moved away. Most people can handle that better than them, but folks don't realize that there's still issues of that death that happened that never was processed, feeling shoved under the table. So today, I want you to look at and think about, and you may need to go back and forth and look at this video several times. Today, I'd like for you to sit back and look and say, well, what level of grief am I going through? Where am I at today? Because I really, truly believe you cannot change behaviors you're not aware of. And you cannot process feelings that you don't take ownership of. And to be aware of your behaviors and take ownership of your feelings is the first step in dealing with what's going on with you emotionally. But you got to take ownership of it, and you've got to also be aware of your behaviors. So the first step is just this. We're not going to go any further right now. I just want you to take this and think about this, play it back 2 or 3 times, And then if you've got counselors, pastors, maybe other friends and family that's going through issues of grief and loss, maybe the first thing that they need to see is something like this. Share this with them and say, hey, I've got a little video for you to watch that may be helpful for you. So absorb it, think about it, and ask yourself, where am I at? Now, there's ways of dealing with grief and loss. It's a journey, and you can get through it. We'll help you later on with some other videos, and we'll talk about that. But today, I want you to really consider how levels of grief and loss, what are they? Where are they in your life? Thank you for joining me today. Please look at my other videos that I have available. Also, share this with you, share this with others, and pass it on. And I hope this has helped you today. Stay tuned for more information here on the VTO Moments channel. Thank you for joining me.